A while back, the 8-bit guy posted a video on how to choose an MS-DOS gaming laptop. At that stage in time, I was just playing DOS games on my modern PC using DOSBox. I never really thought much about owning the real hardware to run DOS games, but then, just a few days ago, I got this. This is a Fujitsu LifeBook 765DX laptop. This is a laptop that I got from a family member who owned it back in the day. This laptop was released in 1997, or at least that's what the emergency CD tells me. It was copyrighted anyway. When I got this laptop, it had already been upgraded to Windows 98 SE, but as far as I could tell, this laptop was meant to ship with Windows 95, as noted on the laptop's designed for mark and Fujitsu's website. But we're not here to talk about software, we're here for the laptop. Alright, settle down. We'll start things off in an unusual way, and start with the right side of the computer. Here we have a combination keyboard and mouse PS2 port, a volume wheel, three 3.5mm audio jacks for headphones, line-in for things like cassette players, and a microphone jack. You also get an external floppy drive port, a speaker which is perfect if you plan on playing SpongeBob SquarePants typing, a power switch, DC power plug, a USB port, although the one on mine's broken, and a theft prevention lock. Do note if you're going to be using Windows 95 on a laptop with a USB port like this one, you're going to need to find the Windows 95 companion CD-ROM with USB support, like this. On the back we find this cover, but if you slide this panel right here, we reveal a phone jack for 56K dial-up with the laptop's built-in modem, and a docking port for port replicators or docking stations. If we open up the rest of the cover, we find some additional I/O, including a 9-pin serial port, 25-pin parallel port, and an SVGA output. And yes, you can still connect this to a modern monitor, provided it has a VGA port. Right beside all of that is an infrared blaster if you like fast IRDA communications, transmitting signals at up to 4 whole megabytes per second. To the left of the system, we find another speaker. Yes, this laptop does have stereo sound, and 2 PCMCIA card slots for things like network adapters, TV cards, and more. On the bottom, you'll find adjustable feet, a compartment to upgrade the system memory, and 2 multifunction bays. Normally, the system would come pre-installed with a lithium-ion battery in Bay 1 and a CD-ROM drive in Bay 2. But these can swap out for modular components, and yes, that does include a floppy drive. These modules, including the CD-ROM drive, all use the same port. And yes, that does mean that Bay 1 components will work just fine in Bay 2. But what's the point of plugging into Bay 2 if they don't physically take up the size of Bay 2? Well, that's why it comes with this bracket, so you can fit Bay 1 modules to fit in Bay 2. Opening up the lid, we find what Fujitsu likes to call the ErgoTrack pointing device. This is literally an analog nub with left and right click buttons underneath. While it's nice for basic computer tasks like file management, the cursor is also really slow, so getting to the spot you want can take a while. The keyboard is nice and offers great tactile feedback, but it has some questionable design choices. Sure, it may look like your standard computer keyboard, but taking a closer look, you'll see why I'm bringing this up. For one thing, the keys on the left have their width shortened, which resulted in the tab and control key being the same size as a regular key. And immediately above that, you'll notice that there isn't a key for the tilde right beside the 1 key. For whatever reason, Fujitsu decided it was a good idea to place the tilde key right beside the spacebar. It also uses that strange hidden numpad sort of deal. I mean, we can deal with a 10-keyless keyboard. You'll notice that it has a left control and alt, but there is no right control and alt. Function is also placed at the very edge instead of control. Looking here, you can also see that Fujitsu hasn't followed what most people were doing with blinking LED status lights, instead going for a single LCD display underneath the screen. Right beside that is a power button. Why would we need a secondary power button, you ask? The answer to that is just in case you left the power switch on after your last use. I was pretty disappointed at the screen when I opened the laptop up for the first time because I saw the dreaded contrast control, which indicates that the screen is DSTN. If you don't know why SDN and DSTN screens are disappointing, to sum it up, it has poor contrast and color saturation. The biggest disadvantage to its STN or DSTN screen is that motion blur is horrible, making games almost completely unplayable. This laptop screen is also an SVGA screen which also means that DOS games won't scale properly, but I've already had enough of the screen, so I just used the external monitor port and I couldn't be happier. I was at a thrift store one day and found the Toshiba Satellite Pro 440 CDX, and I was about to get it, but then passed on it when I was doing a quick internet search and found that it uses an STN screen, and also didn't come with a power supply, so I settled with the 765DX because it was the same screen, had better specs, came with a power supply, and not to mention I got it for free. Okay, so let's talk tech specs. The DX uses an Intel Pentium processor clocked at 166 MHz and has MMX technology. From the factory, it comes with 16 MB of memory, which can be upgraded to a maximum of 80 MB. Its CD-ROM drive can go to speeds of up to 20x and comes with a 2 GB hard drive. Its sound card can handle both PCM and FM and is Sound Blaster compatible. If you have a laptop where the battery isn't dead like mine, you could get up to 3 hours of battery life, but if you have two plugged in at once, which I highly doubt you'll ever have, it'll get you 6. The dimensions for this laptop is 11.7 by 9.7 by 2.3 inches. All this weighing in at a hefty 7.6 pounds with a floppy drive and battery installed.
So what do I think of this laptop? If it's really cheap, think about it, because I highly recommend you shoot for the TX model of this laptop, because it has a TFT screen even if it is SVGA. If you're not a huge super fan of the 8-bit guy, no offense, and you don't mind following exactly everything he says, I say again, go for the TX variant of this laptop. Unless you want to connect to an external display, in which case you can go for either the DX or the TX.